The Kenyan economy is facing a crisis. A couple of exogenous shocks combined with a dry spell is threatening to derail economic recovery 2 years after a COVID-19 pandemic squandered economic development. What is the way forward? Policymakers at the National Treasury are scrambling to come up with a solution, but experts are saying that it will take a miracle to revive economic growth. What do we need to do? I'll be having this conversation with the experts in the house. Plus, later on, I'll be looking at the extractive industry. I want to take you back to the year 2016 when Kenya passed the Mining Act and, of course, reviewed the Mining Code, which had been in existence for more than 60 years. I repeat, 60 years. And there was all hopes that finally Kenya has beaten that corner and now we are about to benefit from extractive industry. The Vision 2030 talks about a contribution of about 10% to GDP from the extractive sector. Are we likely to achieve this, bearing in mind that we are barely doing 1.5% contribution to GDP? I'll be posing that question to the experts in the house. My name is O'Brien Kimani. When you see me, you see business. And that's right, because that is what we're about to do in the next 2 hours right here on KBC Channel 1. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle. At KBC Channel 1 is the Twitter handle that I want you to get in touch with me. Remember, our reporters are on the ground. From Nairobi to Kisumu to Eldoret, they are there and camping there to give you the latest in terms of news. What is happening in a county near you? You all better stay right here. I said my name is O'Brien Kimani. And of course, joining me in studio right now is Wanjohi. He is the head of policy and research at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. He's joining him this morning to give us their perspective as manufacturers and what is the way forward. He has been here before, and so you definitely know that you are talking to a man, or we'll be talking to a man who knows a thing or two about economy, manufacturing, and many other things. Job, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning. I want first of all to hear from you. What is the status of our economy as we stand?
Thank you, O'Brien. The state of the economy today is a bit complicated because we have a new government ambitious to revive the economy.
Yep.
We have a Kenyan population that is ambitious to receive the benefits of the new government. We have the Kenyans who are being pressed every day to pay taxes so that now the government can be able to provide some of these services. Coming also at a time that we have just concluded the general elections. It's about now 6 months. And even when we talk about coming out of the COVID-19, which the effect is still being felt up to date because of things like freight cost and whatnot. And if you try to paint this picture statistically, if you look at the fiscal deficit, today it is starting at around 5 to 6%. Yet what is desirable at what is called convergence criteria is at 3%. But this is out of high expenditure from the government, but the revenues are low. And the government want to see how it can bridge this. So that's from one angle. The second angle is from the drought that we're experiencing as a country. The climatic conditions have been changing over time. In fact, it is becoming very hard and unreliable, and you cannot predict when the rains are likely to come by. So you find as an agrarian nation, whereby we are dependent on GDP growth at 50% from the agriculture sector. That is another area that is being hurt big time. So that's another major angle. The other major angle also we need to look at is things to do with Forex. If you look at the Forex situation today, or the exchange rate, you'll see it is worsening day after day. If you look at where we were 15 months ago, the exchange rate between dollar and Kenya shilling 2021 was at about 100 to 105. But now you're talking of 127 plus.
Yeah.
As a net importer country, whereby we are over-dependent on what comes into the country rather than what we produce within the country, that's worsening the situation because the imported goods becomes more expensive. If you look again even at the interest rate, the base lending rate that is set by the Central Bank of Kenya, today that's 8.75%. During COVID, we had gone to as low as 7%, or I think it was 7.2%. And that affects the lending rate by the commercial banks to the investors and whatnot. So you can see how compounded the situation is within the country, and it is going to take the miracles of serious policymakers who have the best interests of the country first to change the situation.
Very good. And I also like the fact that, you know, apart from you know, the internal issues that you have just mentioned about, we're also dealing with, you know, other global issues, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis that the world is grappling with. But when you look at the two, you know, between external and internal issues, which ones are having a bigger impact on the Kenyan economy?
Any time that in a globalized setup that you have to go through such, I have to say that the government or us as a republic, as a nation, we need to put in place safety net measures or measures that we can rely on in case we have a crisis. Where do we have to source internationally food because we are drought-stricken, rather than as an agrarian nation, we depend on what we can produce locally. So I have to say that we have good policies, but we are falling short of ensuring that these policies are working. If you look at, again, I'm going to get to the macroeconomic situation again. If you look at our levels of expenditure, if you look at our levels of revenue, if you look at our levels of savings as a country because of a crisis, you find that we don't have enough cushioning measures that have been put in place. And that's the reason why when we are exposed, we feel totally exposed as a country. So when we have worsening of the exchange rate, I'm going to give a very good example. The worsening of the exchange rate. But it's because we have not put enough foreign reserves with ourselves, such that we can be able to regulate the market forces, demand and supply forces of shilling against the dollar.
But you know, from the figures that we've been getting from the Central Bank of Kenya, I mean, in the last 3 years, when you look at the level of our foreign exchange reserves, I mean, they have been above policy numbers, you know, set by the central bank.
Yes.
I mean, the National Treasury, and they have been talking about almost 6 months of import cover against a set cap of about 4 months of
4.5 months.
Yes, 4.5 months.
Yes.
So then, when you say that we don't have enough, is it that CBK has been lying to us?
One thing, and we have to contend with, is that it is high time that we review some of these indicators, because the way they were set 20 or 25 years ago is not the way probably they can fit us today. We had a change of our constitution that was developed during the independence. 2010, we promulgated a new one. That means even the import cover over 4.5 months is something that we need to look into, because even our GDP has grown. So that means we need to review further. Even when we are setting the 4.5, by then we are not importing much as we are importing today. So the import levels have really increased. The other thing also is our debt level. We have never been where we are, whereby the interest rates that we are paying are over 500 billion cash shillings, and they are being paid in hard currencies. So the figures could be right, but it's time that we look into our policy position to see whether we need to change it. And
also the other tragedy that we are facing is that you know, when you look at our debt levels, we're talking about almost 9.9 trillion shillings. This is the highest that we have ever gotten. And it's also dominated in foreign currencies. There is a proposal that it is high time we rethink on that policy and start looking at borrowing on Kenya shilling terms. Is this possible, or is it workable?
That is an agreement that can only be reached at between the Kenyan government and the lenders, either domestically or internationally. But why it is the loans are obtained with a foreign denomination, that is the US dollars, is so that they can be able to caution themselves against like now the depreciation that is happening today, or against any appreciation that can happen today or in future. So there could be some resistance that can come from the donor community or the lending community, but the Kenyan government is can also reconsider borrowing in shillings so that we can be able to caution ourselves. Anytime that we have a spike of over 1% or 2% or depreciation of the shilling, you find that as far as our debt level increased by almost 50 billion shillings to 100 billion shillings. So it is a great situation whereby when our loans are denominated in foreign currency, it is an expense on us. We need also to be nationalistic enough when we are negotiating some of these terms so that we don't end up losing more.
Do we have a precedent where, apart from big economies, like China, like, Russia, UK, that can set certain terms, when they are borrowing? Do we have an example of a peer economy that has really managed to negotiate loans in their currency?
You find, especially less developed and developing nations, because of the risks that are associated with the economies. You find most instances the loans are denominated in foreign currencies rather than the local currency. So I may not be in a position to give any example because you find is one that one of the major conditions that are put by the international lenders.
Let's also talk about the issues of taxation, and I know the Kenya Revenue Authority is under pressure from the National Treasury, from the government, to try and meet and surpass their revenue target. I think you're talking about 2 point...
Today we are at 2.1 trillion.
2.1?
Yes.
I think the target for 23 is about 2.5?
Yes.
Trillion shillings. And so they are doing all that is possible to ensure that Kenyans pay taxes.
Yes.
But, for any business to pay taxes, the business environment must be good enough. The environment of doing business must be conducive. In a situation like ours, then are we really trying to squeeze water out of a rock?
One major issue that the government need to do is to ensure that those who are already being taxed today, the tax rate is not being increased on them. We have a number of Kenyans who are in business, could be employed, but they are not paying taxes. And this is the base that needs to be reached to. When you're talking of a business that is established today and the government shareholding as far as taxation is concerned, the effective taxation rate is about 40%. That's a major shareholding by the government. And any time that you can try to increase more than that, it can lead to the collapse of that company or that industry. So it's a question of looking at the tax base rather than the tax rate. The tax base is where today we have 5.5 million Kenyans who are paying taxes. How can we increase this to 10 or 15 million Kenyans who are contributing to the public coffers? And statistics shows that, like now, the IBC statistics shows that we have 22 million registered voters. That means these are Kenyans who are eligible to pay taxes. Unfortunately, the rate of unemployment in the country is very low. The rate of business picking up in the country is very low, even for the SMEs. So not necessarily that the 22 million Kenyans are the one who can be brought into this bracket. But you can see an improvement from where we are 5.5 to about 10, or you double that, using better technological mechanisms to be able to track where the revenue can be obtained. But if you say that you're going to increase the tax rate for already taxed corporate bodies, the manufacturers, you find today there is imposition of stamp duty or excise stamp duty. Tomorrow there is inflation adjustment still on the same. You find that there are about another 5 months, there is change of the base rate for the excise duty. So these arbitrary changes really affect the already compliant private sector players. So it's a question of the government looking at how it can increase the tax base rather than the tax rate. That's one angle. Mm-hmm. The second angle, the revenues are generated in an economy because of the economic activities that are happening in that economy. Mm-hmm. Anytime that I have to buy, anytime that I have to offer a service, anytime that I have to offer a product and whatnot, it is out of this that the government gets the revenues. So that means if the activities are few, more you'll find that the taxes that the government is collecting is few. But if the activities are many, you find that the government will be able to collect more taxes out of it. And now that speaks to the business operating environment. Issues to do with the global competitiveness, issues to do with SME development, so that when SMEs have developed, mm-hmm. we have robust multiplier effect of the economic activities. We are talking of looking at how we can have export-led initiatives in the country, so that we can attract more of the foreign earnings, we can have more of remittance coming to the country, and be able, like now, to stabilize the exchange rate. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the measures that need to be looked into, so that the government can increase the revenues that it wants, but also ensure that the nexus is also helping the private sector to grow.
And I like the fact that you have pointed the issues of around policy instability, you know, whereby this year this is the policy, next year it has changed, it has shifted, and that unstable, you know, policy kind of an environment is absolutely bad for any business. Because 3-4 years back, the government was talking about expanding the manufacturing base to contribute about 15% of Kenya's GDP by the year 2022. I know we missed that target. We are still at 9.8%. What would have happened if we pursued aggressively that policy to ensure that we increased the contribution of manufacturing to GDP to about 15%?
One thing you've talked is about the predictability of our policy environment. Mm-hmm. And I like asking the policymakers like myself, if you walk today to a shop and realize that a product that was going for 300 shillings mm-hmm. is going for 500 shillings, you get annoyed, even yourself. Mm-hmm. You feel like this change is a bit unfortunate. Mm. It's the same thing that happens to those who want to invest and those who have already invested. Arbitrary change of the policy environment, arbitrary change on the environmental, tax, trade, industrialization policies affects the level of investment, affects the level of confidence that the players within that economy or those who are interested to come to that economy would be interested in coming on board, or to continue playing or having their operations more and more. But you have asked a very good question of what can we do to ensure that our GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector hits 15%, as had been envisioned 5 years ago in 2018 mm-hmm. under the Big Four agenda. Indeed, we have set a higher target. Today, we are talking of Vision 20 by 30, mm-hmm. such that 2030 will be contributing 20% mm-hmm. to the GDP. And this is now assuming that the economic growth, the GDP growth is expected to grow at 10% per year or year on year, as is envisioned in Vision 2030.
And of course, we are behind that target.
We are behind that target. Mm-hmm. We are behind that target. And I'm happy around 2008, 2009, we were closer to that target, mm-hmm. almost surpassed it. Mm-hmm. But still, it's good always to set a higher target so that every other time you're reminded there is room for growth on your side. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why we said, okay, 15% was not enough. Now we are talking of 20% GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector. There are various issues that need to be looked into so that we can be able to achieve this goal. And I started by talking about the global competitiveness. If you look at our global competitiveness today, with the issues to do with reducing regulatory burden, you find that there are various agencies that are intervening in the manufacturing sector. You find the county government and the national government are intervening in the same agency, and they are demanding fees and charging from that agency over the same role. You find also the issue to do with the cost of power. Reliable, quality and affordable supply of power in the country. In fact, we are opposing the change that is expected to come on 1st of April, the power tariffs that are being reviewed, because already today we have been pushed to the corner. We are buying power at 0.16 to around 0.18. The review is going to push this to around 0.20 or 0.22, of which, when this comes in, it affects the global competitiveness of the goods that are manufactured in the country. Again, when you look at the level of illicit trade, we normally have statistics that we obtained a while back saying that 40% of the market share in the country is controlled by the illicit trade. 40%. 40%. We need to ensure that this comes down. One of the measures is to ensure that the recordation measures that have been proposed by Anti-Counterfeit Authority have been put in place so that the intellectual property rights can be protected. When you're talking about the substandard goods, counterfeit goods, other custom and undervalued goods, all these are some of the things that some of the goods that you need to look at. The other thing also is having manufacturing-centric counties, because at the county level, that we normally we can do what is called backward integration and obtain the raw materials and intermediate products that are required for value addition in our manufacturing hubs. So that's another area that you need to look into. Ensure that we have conducive business environment at the county level, whereby we can source our rice, we can source our wheat, we can source our maize, we can source our sorghum, we can have the mining bases, and then from there we have now the value addition centers, either close to the source of the raw materials and intermediate products, or they can even be brought to Nairobi for uptake in the international market. And various other issues that need to be looked at the global competitiveness. The data we have shows that we are 115th globally and competitive compared to the rest. That means we have other 114 countries that are more competitive than Kenya. Then we're looking at export-led industrialization. If you want to contribute that 15 that we have set for ourselves, and all the 20% that now we have set at the moment, we need to consider the international market very much. Not only for local production and local consumption 100%, because there will be no wealth creation there. There will be no foreign earnings that will be generated out of this. So we need to intensify our export to the regional markets, that is like East African community, to African Continental Free Trade Area, to EU Economic Partnership Agreements, or even to AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Ensure that we are intensifying our exports to such regions. And if we can be able to establish some other export ready markets like Ethiopia, that is just up here in the north of Kenya, it's something else that we can look into, so that we drive the GDP contribution by the manufacturing sector. Another very important base is the SME sector, looking at how they can ensure that they have enough access to finance, they have enough access to the market, and also their governance structure is being looked into, so that the 80% level of job contribution they're doing today can increase from there to a better number than that, or even the multiplier effect in the SMEs can really increase. So those are some of the sampled measures, policy measures that need to be looked into, so that we can move from where we are 7.2 GDP contribution to 20% GDP contribution. I
mean, it's proper to say that the government is, the new administration is still young. We're talking about less than 8 months in office, and so it's proper to imagine that they're still trying to figure out what do we need to do, what button do we need to press, who do we need to place where. But the fact of the matter is the government has been ongoing. It is not the government that's changed. It is the leadership of the government that changed. And so how do we ensure that then there is this kind of continuity in terms of our policies, that our policies are not dependent on who is in power?
That's a tricky area, given that the top policymakers are the executive, coming from the president, to the cabinet secretaries, to the principal secretaries, and then they come and fight the office occupants who are the technocrats, from the Secretary of State Trade, Secretary of Agriculture and whatnot, and then coming down to these other senior technocrats, to the middle and to the low. So you find every new government comes with its own manifesto. And if you would compare the manifesto that was issued, or what is called the plan by Kenya Kwanza, and what was being done by the previous government, you could see there was discrepancy. Because what they want to offer an alternative to what the previous government was doing. So policy disruption has to come in. Whereby the new government or the new dispensation, it will call for new policy measures to be put in place, because that is their philosophy and that's their thinking. So we cannot really say that it should be what the previous regime was doing is what this new regime should be doing, but it should not be disruptive enough to cause economic decline. It should not be disruptive.
But is it this what the Vision 20 that was trying to cure by saying that we want to do this in medium term 1, medium term 3, medium term 4, medium term 5, up to the year 2030? But it seems like the issues around Vision 2030, the medium plan, the goals, the targets, these are not being given a lot of thoughts like the way they used to 7 years ago. How then do we realign our plans, our goals, our targets with Vision 2030?
If you look at all the pillars that are in the Vision 20, that especially the economic pillar and now the manufacturing, you'll see that what was put in the Vision 2030 around 2008, and what came in the industrialization policy in 2012, what came into the Kenya Industrial Transformation Program in 2015, or what we got under the Big Four agenda in 2017, what we have gotten in under the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto in 2022, all are speaking from different scripts. So it's just a question of ensuring, because Vision 2030 was an overarching policy document. It was not getting granular. It's just a question of ensuring that the government that is in place is really considering the Vision 2030, so that when they are granulating the policy by saying, when we're talking about economic development, we are talking about development of economic free zones, talk of special economic zones, talk of EPZ and whatnot, or even when we're talking about certain policy direction as far as taxation is concerned, they should try and ensure that it is harmonized from one government to the other. But it should not be lost in our mind that every new government comes with its own interests, comes with its own philosophies, which may be a little bit different from what was done in the Vision 2030. But my insistence so that we can have policy consistency, we can have investment consistency, we can have, we can be able to track the Vision 2030 from when it was developed to date, is a question of the new government to ensure that it is anchoring their policy measures on that document. And also I want to go back to something that you said, and this has been also reported in the media, that there are plans by the government to import goods worth more than 200 billion shillings, to try and counter inflation and to try and alleviate the suffering of Kenyans. It sounds and it looks like it's a good plan, but is it a good plan at the end of the day? What else can we do with 200 billion shillings? That is an internal solution. If I may ask, are these goods that are being bought preferential? And preferential, I mean import duty-free and domestic taxes free. Yet on this side, we are complaining of the austerity measures and the exemption that the government is giving. But the government is giving exemption to itself. But you're complaining that we don't have enough revenues. That's one angle. The other one is, are these products that are being imported as finished products available locally? Because if they're available locally, the government needs to partner with the local manufacturers for those products to be manufactured locally. Like now what you can do, when you bring in some of the input, like now under the edible oil, some of those inputs attract some duty at the raw material and the level, and also at the intermediate level. If the government can say we are going to exempt those duties so that we bring more of the raw materials and intermediate products, then value addition happens, and ensure that probably this capping of the price to ensure that what the government ceded to the private players has been passed over to the consumer. By doing so, you'll be saving the investment that are already in place. You'll be saving the jobs that are already in place. You're saving the confidence of the investors who have invested in the country. Those who are interested to come and invest as manufacturers also will be saved. And they'll see that there's policy consistency in the country. But when you bring a preferentially traded good, you know, payment of duties that are being paid otherwise by those who are doing the local value addition, you find that there will be no level playing field when these two products are hitting the market. What has been brought preferentially into the country will be cheaper than what is locally produced.
And this is likely to have an impact on competitiveness of local production. Of
course, it's going to have a major impact on the competitiveness of locally manufactured products. Yeah.
I would be coming back to you because I would want to hear what is the response from the Kenya Association of Manufacturers in terms of in regard to that issue of a government planning to import highly subsidized product into the Kenyan market. Good morning and thank you very much. If you're joining us right now, we're having a very interesting conversation here about the status of the Kenyan economy. We have really touched on taxation to imports of preferentially treated goods, to manifestos, and of course to the country's long-term plan, which we refer to as Vision 2030. Our policy misalignment and how that can be addressed from a policy level, and among many other things. This is the kind of conversation that we're having here in the morning. We also want to look at the issues of banking, because credit to the private sector is a sign of improved or improving business confidence in the country. But when you look at the numbers that are coming from Kenya Bankers Association as well as the Central Bank of Kenya, you see that credit to the private sector has somehow stagnated. We are not seeing much growth. What is exactly happening? And joining us to help us put this conversation into perspective is Peter Washira. He's the CEO of Jijenge Credit. They are in the business of selling money. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us from here. From the credit side, from the credit selling side, where you come from, how has the worsening economic performance affecting your business?
Well, thank you, O'Brien, for inviting me, and I'd say hi to my colleague. Well, on the financial part, the economy is a bit experiencing some turbulence, because if you look at the interest rates, all the banks have been allowed to increase their interest rates across board. And therefore, technically that means the cost of loans, the cost of lending will go up, the cost of goods, be it manufacturing or retail, they'll definitely go up, because most of those traders borrow locally. And therefore, the cost of living generally for all Kenyans will rise. And, well, ideally, that is one of the main ways of controlling inflation. But the knock-on effect can be a bit tough on the normal Kenyans. Yes.
We've seen a situation whereby banks are now issuing warning to borrowers that they are reviewing or adjusting their lending rates, which will definitely have a significant impact on the credit market. How the customers, how are they responding to these concerns?
Well, it's a shock to most Kenyans, because if you look at the manifesto of the current regime, they had promised to lower the interest rates. But now the bottom-up model is actually not being implemented. And therefore, most Kenyans are going to suffer, especially the ones who have regular income. Because if you factor in the increase in interest rate, I think the lowest, I think, or rather the average is around 2%. It will mean that if you had an installment that you are paying monthly, you have to adjust or go back to your budgeting and either reduce your expenses at home so that you can factor in the increased interest rate, which implies that the installment you are paying will have to increase.
And this is being applied across the board, eh?
Across, yeah.
And of course, you as big manufacturers, as big borrowers, you have the advantage of renegotiating your loan terms and of course are getting very favorable rates. But of course, it's also having an impact on you because the consumer is becoming somehow disempowered, and so their spending power is reducing, right?
You're right. Any time that the value chain is disrupted, and in this case now we're talking of this disruption at the consumption level, and not also forgetting that there is disruption that can have that also happening at the manufacturing level. Good to remind all of us that like Kenya Association of Manufacturers, 60% of the members are in small and medium bracket. So you find because of the adjustment of the interest rate and their low operating base, they are affected at that level. And then their markets also are affected because the interest rates are being increased to counter the inflation that is in the market. So you find that disruption, and in fact even the statistics showed very well in December that the circulation rate of Kenyan currency in the economy had really gone down in December. I think 11 years, compared 11 years, it was the lowest. Yeah. And I think has been the trade also.
The broad money supply.
But also in January. So if the liquidity at the consumption level goes down, that means that suppresses the demand. And when the demand is suppressed, then at the production level, our capacity utilization, which today an average is 60%, comes to about 45% or 40%. And you cannot forget, don't forget that we have the fixed cost and also the variable cost. The fixed cost becomes now a very big burden to the manufacturing firm, but they can be able to adjust the variable cost in terms of employment. Like now today, the employments in the EPZ, they have really been depressed because the fixed costs are high, the markets are not available, so the variable costs have to be reduced so that the farm can really sustain.
Wachira, from where you see it, have you seen a slackening demand in terms of loans where you're not getting as much demand as you used to?
Thank you. And I would like to change my name from Macharia to Macharia.
I mean, to Macharia.
Yes. Well, the demand for cash and for the borrowing market is very high. Because what happens when, for example, manufacturers go to the international market and maybe the dollar, and actually the dollar has gone up. It was initially maybe they were buying goods at 100, now it's at 133. They'll go back to their financiers because I know most of them borrow and also increase the amount that they need to borrow. So they're able to purchase the same goods which are being sold at a higher price. So ideally the cost of borrowing has gone up. The demand for borrowing is equally very high because most individuals and corporates are trying to meet that gap, which must be, because life has to go on. If you're a manufacturer, you will not close shop because prices have gone up. You go back to your financer and borrow more, so that you're able to meet
or you
the
adjust
capacity.
your costing.
Exactly. But now the person who suffers is the end user because all those costs, all those operational costs, borrowing costs are usually given to the end user.
They have to push to the end user.
Yeah, because that's where you're finding the cost of goods, the retail goods, the supermarkets, shops and spare parts shops and all that. The prices have gone up.
As lenders, there has been a lot of talks around, dollar scarcity in the Kenyan market, where, some importers are saying that they do not have access to dollars to buy raw materials. Have you felt these?
Well, the scarcity of dollar is, I think it's being felt worldwide, because also the American government is trying to control the world market also. And how do they do it? By ensuring that all the transactions are done in dollar denomination. And therefore, when it comes to circulation, that one will affect most of the governments across the world. However, locally, I know the CBK is burning the midnight oil to try and manage that by ensuring that the reserves are quite moderated, and they ensure that they have enough dollars to ensure that those purchases are done seamlessly. But on the part of all of us as a global unit, we need to improve our balance of payment. How do we do it? By improving our exports. We need to either become a manufacturing state or we do commercial farming so that you're able to export more as opposed to importing more. Yes.
So how are you dealing with that dollar shortage?
The dollar shortage is being controlled by CBK because they're the ones who are in charge of the financial market, and I believe they're up to the task, and they are. I have not heard of any person who says that they are not able to import because they don't have dollars. But of course,
we are surrounded. We are surrounded by a manufacturer.
Yes.
Are you having a situation whereby you are members or members of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, are having difficulties importing products or raw materials because of lack of dollars in the market?
Yeah, and especially those who are in the large category. They can mop up the dollar. One manufacturer can mop up the dollar that can be mopped up by small and medium, 100 or 200 of them. So you find that at that level there is rationing that is happening. You walk into your banking hall and you want probably dollars, $50 million. Sorry, you want $50,000 or you want $500,000, but you're told, okay, this will not provide the whole of it today. You need to come tomorrow so that we can provide the same. So we have instances, especially for the large manufacturers. Yes.
Well, if you're just joining us, I keep on alerting you that the conversation we're having in the studio, we are looking at the state of our economy. Of course, we are touching on so many other things, from taxations to dollar shortages to the cost of credit in this country and our policy misalignment, and asking ourselves, what do we really need to do to ensure that we put the economy back on track? And those are the issues that we are raising here. And we're in the company of Wanjohi. He is the head of policy and research at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and Peter Wachira is the CEO of Jijenge Credit, all joining us here to give us perspective on how the market is performing. And I want to now to shoot this question to Peter Wachira. If the situation continues unabated, if nothing is done, what do you think will happen by the time we get to the first half of this year?
Well, the main thing that is going to happen is that Kenyans will feel the pinch more, because they are the end users.
So when you talk about the pinch, explain to Kenyans what exactly is a pinch.
The cost of living. The cost of living will definitely rise. Well, to give hope to Kenyans is that what I can say is that the harsh economic times are being felt across board, worldwide. And it was even aggravated by the war between Ukraine and Russia. And
there is no end in sight to that war.
There's no end in sight, because the protagonists are still fighting.
So we must adjust our realities that we are.
Yes, it's a long haul.
If anything, the situation is likely to get worse.
Definitely, yeah.
Job, what will happen if the situation stays the way it is?
I would take it as an opportunity and as a challenge on the other hand, and ask myself, how comes we cannot produce enough wheat in the country, that we have to depend on importation from Ukraine?
Yet we have, conducive climatic conditions.
Yes.
In Narok,
these are the hard questions that we need to ask ourselves. And these are the hard questions that the government today need to ask itself. Ourselves, why do we have to keep importing raw materials, yet we are calling ourselves an agrarian nation? And when even we import that, like what my friend is talking about, it even affects our forex.
Yeah.
Because we are selling more of our hard currency.
We are a net importer.
Yeah, we are a net importer, rather than, receiving more. So that's why I'm saying that I take it as an opportunity, but also as a time to challenge ourselves as a country, awaken up our conscience. Are we really on the right path as far as our agricultural agenda or agrarian agenda is concerned? So it's just a question of ensuring that the wheat belt or any other product that we source from Ukraine, we do value chain integration from intermediary consumption to where it is being produced, to value addition in our factories from where it is produced, and ensure that we have sufficiency across those value chains.
I also saw something interesting where the Ministry of Agriculture is saying that Kenya has struck an accord with Zambia for Kenyans to do maize farming in Zambia. As manufacturers, how did you receive that news?
In our Manufacturing Priority Agenda 2023 that we launched 2 weeks ago, we are looking into industrializing agriculture, an agenda that that need to be pursued more consistently. Good initiative, because within those terms that they have drawn with our peer country, there could be incentives that have been put in place. You never know. But when we pump our money in such a country, it is jobs that we are creating for them. Yeah. It is forex that we are
exporting capital.
Yes, we are exporting capital. It is our forex that we are. It's our forex that we are hurting. Why can't we, in reverse, say we are going to do that here in Kenya? Because we have those belts. If it is maize plantation, we have belts whereby we can do this. So we need to be, when we are negotiating, we need to look at our national interest first and ask ourselves, can we pump that that capital in Kericho, in Uasin Gishu,
in Galana Kulalu?
In Galana Kulalu. See, and we have farmers there. Jobs are created. Investments comes in. Industrialization of agriculture or industrialized agriculture kicks in, whereby now we are able to mop up some of, like now, that maize in abundance to our factories, and then we're able to make the wheat flour and many other products that comes maize flour and many other products that come out of the maize. So it is a good plan, but it's not nationalistic enough.
What do you think about this idea?
Well, I'll also ride on my colleague's proposal and suggestion that we need to be selfish. We need to, first of all, exhaust our opportunities locally. There's Galana Kulalu, which is all that vast area, northeastern. We can convert it into a maize growing area. We don't need to export capital, export labor, export our expertise, jobs. And maybe our fertilizer might find itself down there being used to farm maize that is meant to come to Kenya. So let's exhaust the local opportunities first. Yes.
Do you think we have done that?
No, we've not done that. We have a lot of... we need to have a technical team to support agriculture and trade locally, so that they can put all those great minds together and exhaust all those opportunities locally and within the existing farms, improve the efficiency, harness anything, maybe even support the main grid with by generating power from cow dung and chicken dung. All those opportunities are there. Yes.
Let's also now turn back to Parliament, where there is a proposal that it is high time that we reintroduced price caps in the credit market to try and regulate the cost of credit in this country. I know that proposal is before Parliament. From a market perspective, what is your take on this?
Any government or any organization, or let's say country that introduces price controls, they end up being in a lot of trouble. Because what happens, a good example is if you look at the neighboring countries. If, for example, our goods are, prices of goods are lowered, people come across the borders, buy, actually distort the market by buying the cheap goods and sell them abroad. So price distortions are an area that we need to discourage, and a good economist will tell you that's a no-go zone. The best thing is usually to do a subsidy, so to support the price within the Kenyan borders and the Kenyan boundaries. But the moment you interfere with the prices, you're in for a rude shock, and it can become very turbulent in future. Yes.
I know Kenya had dalliance with these about 4 years ago, and the government was forced to withdraw these after it became apparently that it was not working. Job, what is your take on this? Do you think this is the right time to be having this kind of a conversation, that it is high time we draft regulations on how to cap interest rates?
Yes, you're right when you say that there was a trial of this about 6 years ago, starting from around 2016 to about 2018 or 2019 beginning, and it was catastrophic, whereby access to credit was a real issue to the private sector because of collateral issues, because of our banking nature in the country. It is commercial based. But after that, when we had the decapping, there was insistence from the South Central Bank that the banks tried to maintain the rates as low as possible, and the central bank became tough on it. One simple question I have to ask: when our rates have between 12 and 13, has the commercial banks not made their profits? They made their profits.
Of course.
They have made their profits. So, what is it that there is going to be changed once the rate is increased from 12-13 to 17-18? Is it that there are levels of investments that will come more? Is it that there are more jobs that are going to be created? Is it that they are going to lend more to the private sector players? All that will lead to lowering the competitiveness in lending locally. And you'll hear even the manufacturers saying, I would rather go and lend from outside rather from the local banks, because I get a single digit out there. So it's a loss of market, partially. It is hurting on the competitiveness of lending locally. And what I would say, yes, let the forces of demand and supply be allowed to play without capping the interest rate. But can we maintain our moral authority as the commercial banking sector by maintaining low lending rates, so that we can retain the interest out of the lending that happens in the country? We can ensure that we are infusing competitiveness in the private sector, those who are lending from you. And again, we are ensuring that, like now, we are checking on the inflation, because if you borrow at higher interest rate, subsequently that will lead to the inflation in the country. So let it not be regulated, or let it not be capped, but ensure that the banks have that moral responsibility to ensure that we have low lending rates in the country.
Macharia, from where you stand, and I think the beauty of it is that you're an insider. You're in the credit market.
Yes.
The rating interest rates. Are banks being fair to the borrowers?
That's a good question. But before I answer that, I want to comment on the previous question and say that if you do a cost-benefit analysis on a controlled market and a free market has more benefits in terms of the general economy. Then in terms of interest rates are risk-based. Actually, the current request by CBK is that interest rates or rather, different people should enjoy different interest rates. Why? Because the risks for each business, for each individual are different. And therefore, they are calling it a risk-based market, interest market. And that is the best because it encourages better borrowing habits, better financial management habits, so that once you have a good credit rating, you're also given a lower rate, as opposed to a situation whereby you have a single rate for everybody. The ones who are not good paymasters, will be enjoying a better rate because of now that controlled market. If you look at the Western world, the interest rates are single digits.
Yeah.
They also don't ask for a single security. If you walk into a bank, you're never told to bring your title deed or your logbook or whatever. You just walk in, they look at your credit rating, and you're given a loan. But in the African context, the integrity, the morals are a bit wanting, and therefore it's a culture that we need to inculcate by having
good borrowers, but bad
to be exactly
payers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very good. Because we have to come to the end of this interview, I would want to give each one of you 2 minutes to just tell Kenyans where we are going and give them hope that yes, it is dark, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I want to start with Job.
To my fellow Kenyans, one thing we have to guarantee everybody is that we are trying to work, all of us, as 48 million Kenyans or 50 million Kenyans, to improve the economic situation of this country, the social situation, the political situation of this country. What we are doing every day is awakening the conscience of the senior leadership in the country and ensuring that every move that is being made for the national interest and for the people of the Republic of Kenya. And at the fees, you'll find there will be policy realignment, there will be revenue realignment when the leadership, the senior leadership, all heed to this call. So all is not lost. We're still in the woods. We're still deep in the forest. But what I can guarantee, or I try to guarantee, is that once what we're trying to do and do with with a selfless heart is indeed taken over by the senior leadership or the executive in the country, we will see a change of the situation.
Very good. Yes, Bashir.
Thank you. My request to Kenyans is that we all need to work and work hard, contribute to solutions to all our problems, support the current government so that we can all move together and succeed together. Because the challenges that you are facing are not, they are not new. They are actually happening elsewhere. Those other states are getting solutions. And we need to, in some areas, copy-paste and apply the solutions locally for the betterment of our country and the success of each and every one of us.
Very good. Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning and, of course, for your insight. And we're looking forward to better times ahead. Otherwise, asanteni sana.
Thank you so much.
Very good. You see, the conversation has been around the Kenyan economy. And the fact of the matter is we are in an economic dire strait. But also the other fact of the matter is that we are not here forever. There is something that is being done. And this is upon all of us to ensure that we play our part in ensuring that we reawaken, we re-engineer the Kenyan economy, because when there is economic growth, it benefits all of us. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It may be dark now, but at some point, the rays of the sunshine will indeed come out. O'Brien Kimani is my name. We have been talking about the economic performance of Kenya and the way or the numbers ahead and what the future portends. The next conversation that we're having right here is on the extractive industry. Where are we? Where are we stuck? And what we need to do to drive the growth of the extractive industries. Stay right here. We're back after this break.